Discover the latest health tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories. This is the Health Channel Podcast. Your journey to better health starts now.
Hi. So 9 months have gone by. You've read all of the books about what to expect when you're expecting. You've got all of the necessary items, your nursery's ready, and now your little bundle of joy is here, and you've got tons of questions. Well, I'm just the pediatrician to answer your questions on this episode of Ask the Doc. Welcome to Ask the Doc, a show where we encourage you viewers to send in your questions so that I can answer them in real time. I'm Dr. Scarlet Constant, the founder of Constant Care Pediatrics, and today I'm going to answer all of you first-time or second and third-time parents' questions about newborn care and some of the things that we go through during the first 2 to 3 months of the newborn phase. So please feel free to send in your questions so that I can help guide you through this very fun process. Okay, it looks like we have a question coming in now. This question is from Aaliyah. Hi, Dr. Constant. My husband Trey and I are not so patiently awaiting for the arrival of our first child, who's fashionably late. Anyway, we'd like to know, how often should we feed our newborn and what are the hunger signs? Aaliyah, congratulations. And this is a very exciting time, and I hope that you have a very safe delivery. When your child does come, there are a couple of guidelines for feeding. First of all, you're going to decide whether or not you're going to breastfeed your baby or formula feed your baby. And the reason why I say that you need to make that decision is that the feeding schedules and the habits of feeding are a lot different. They differ between breast and formula. For example, breastfed babies tend to feed a lot more often than formula-fed babies. This is not because they're not filled up. Some people feel that they're not getting filled up with breast milk, or maybe it's a lighter content. That's not the case. Breast milk and formula both have the same caloric intake per ounce. So the breast milk actually is easily digested. It's digested a lot faster in our system than formula is. So a breastfed baby tends to feed every 2 hours to every hour, sometimes every hour and a half. They also like to snuggle a little bit more and bond with their mom, so they tend to get on and latch more often than they would if they were feeding formula in a bottle. So breastfed babies are fed every hour to 2 hours, whereas formula-fed babies can actually go every 2 hours to every 2.5 hours of feeding. So that's usually the intervals that you would use with the feeding. And then you would probably give something like 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces per feed. And of course, this is a gradual process. When your baby first comes, you're going to get used to them and what are their signs of hunger and when they want to feed, and then you'll gradually increase the volume and decrease the frequency as needed. Now, signs of hunger are something called rooting, where if you stroke the cheek of your baby, the baby will actually turn to the side that you're stroking and try to suck. They actually put their hands in their mouth and try to suck, and they'll really just look for something to latch onto, and that's a sign of hunger. Of course, crying is also a sign, but in the beginning, crying is very indiscriminate. So you'll need a couple other signs in addition to crying to know that your child is hungry. Good luck, guys, and I hope those things help. The next question I have is coming in from Facebook, and that's from Jose. Hola, Doc. I'm a boomer on my second marriage, and my wife is a couple of weeks away from delivery. This is Rosa's first child, but I have 2 terrific kids from my first marriage. I'm a little embarrassed to be asking you this question, but what's the correct way to burp a baby? I was too focused on work the first go around and want to be more involved this time. Well, Jose, I commend you for wanting to be more involved in your newborn phase and in your child's early months of life. I think that's very exciting. You shouldn't be embarrassed because burping is actually very difficult, and a lot of us have a lot of questions regarding that. There are a couple of ways to burp your baby. First of all, you can take the baby and just put your baby over your shoulder this way so that their head is above the shoulder line. So in case they burp and spit up, actually the vomit just falls onto the floor instead of just on their face or on your shoulder. So you put the baby up, head over your shoulder, just let them relax on you, and you could either rub or gently tap the baby's back. A lot of people think they have to really hit the baby's back hard or kind of shake them. That is not needed. Just very gentle taps, light taps till you get out a burp, or you could even rub the back very gently, and that usually helps. Another way you might see it in the hospital, the nurses tend to do this, where they'll sit the baby on their lap and hold the upper part of the baby's neck under the chin area so that their airway is open, and you can hold them this way, and then their back is over your hand this way, and then you'll just gently tap their back or gently rub their back so that they could burp, and again, it'll just fall out on the floor if they have a spit up, or they'll just have a nice burp. But so you could hold the baby in this position on your lap, so you're not holding the baby like actually from their jaw, you're letting them sit and rest, you're just guiding them and opening up their airway, and you gently rub the back, or you can gently tap the back. So those are some two very easy ways to burp, and just try to be patient because it takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes sometimes to burp your baby. So we have another question coming in from the All Health TV app, and this is from Molly Rose. Dr. Constant, I'm heading into my third trimester, and I'm getting conflicting opinions on whether to breastfeed or not. The current polling is leaning 60% breastfeed and 40% formula, but I'll be a working mom, so I'm just not sure. What do you think, doctor? Well, Molly, I'm glad that you're asking me this. I think that it's very important for people to understand that when you have a baby, the way you feed your baby, the way you raise your baby, the way you take care of your baby is going to be a decision that you make with you and your partner. And you have to do what works best for you and your family and what you're comfortable with. So while I think it's great that you value the opinions of your friends and family members, I should remind you that their opinion really should not come into play when you're deciding how to feed your baby. With that said, breastfeeding is always a great option. It's natural, it's instinctive for us, and it is a great bonding experience. More than that, your baby is going to get your antibodies that are passed on in your breast milk and given to them. With that said, formula has just the same nutritional advantages as breast milk. You will get the same caloric intake. You will get all of the essential vitamins. You will have, in addition, you'll have iron and vitamin D added to that breast milk, which we don't have sufficient amounts of as females. And the only thing you're missing out with formula is you're not giving your baby your antibodies. So they are not getting passive immunity from the breast milk that they would normally get in the breast milk. They're not getting it in the formula. So those are the two differences. And then based on those two differences, you will decide what you think you can handle and what you would like to do with your baby. Both are very healthy options, but of course we always encourage breastfeeding because that's the natural option, and that is something that could come easy. But if it's too difficult and you have work and conflicting schedules and it doesn't work out for you, formula is a perfectly acceptable option. So it looks like we have some more questions coming in. I guess a lot of you have a lot of questions about the newborn phase, which could be a little tricky. So this next question is from Kent. Hi, Dr. C. My wife Cecilia and I are about to become first-time parents. Cecilia is the poster child for type A. Knowing that she is type A, how can I best support her during the first couple of months of parenthood? That's a great question, Kent, and I'm glad that you are actually tuned in to your wife and how she's feeling, and you're already looking for ways to support her, which is, I think, in itself supportive enough. But with that said, I think the best thing to do is to be there and wait for her to figure out what she needs as far as help. I think what's very difficult for us as first-time parents, we're all parents, is that we know that we're overwhelmed. We know that we need help, but we're not even quite sure where we need the help just yet. So if you're constantly asking, can I help you? What can I do? What do you want me to do? Sometimes it could be a bit frustrating and overwhelming. So just be there and be ready for her to ask you for help when she needs it. Also, if she's feeding, probably breastfeeding, it's a little bit harder to help with the feeding schedule if she's breastfeeding. So when she's breastfeeding, why don't you just make sure you maybe prepare lunch because it's close to lunchtime, or get a meal ready for the two of you, or you could help her set up her pillows and get her in position and sit and talk to her while she breastfeeds. I find that a lot of times when you're breastfeeding, people kind of tend to leave the room or go do something else because they feel like they're not needed. And then you end up sitting all by yourself and you're breastfeeding and you're tired tired and you're sore and you're alone. So pull up a chair, sit next to her, talk, distract her, just be there. Just be there for her, but you don't necessarily have to figure out what your role is. Those things will develop over time. I hope that was helpful, Ken. This next question is coming in from Camille. Dr. Constant, my husband Jeremiah thinks I'm a bit of a nervous Nelly. Maybe he's right, but I was brought up to hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. So I try to be ready for anything. Okay, now that we've established that I'm always at DEFCON 2, when should I contact our pediatrician about our newborn's health or behavior? Well, that's a really great question because newborns are very different in that they have indiscriminate cries, they don't always get a fever, and they don't really have all of the symptoms that we're used to seeing with our younger children. For example, they're not going to have a runny nose and a wheeze or a cough. In the newborn phase, you have a lot less symptoms than what we're used to seeing. So number one, most importantly, is an inconsolable baby is a sick baby. What that means is if your baby is crying and upset and frustrated and feeding doesn't help, you've tried to feed, change the diaper, swaddle, hold them, rock them, be in your arms, and nothing seems to make them happy and they're really upset, you should definitely have your newborn evaluated. This is like the first 2 months of life, because usually those things should soothe your baby. Even holding them and them feeling your heartbeat and listening to your voice usually will calm them down. Secondly, if you happen to take the temperature of your newborn, which should be taken rectally, because that's the most accurate way to get a temperature level under 3 months of age, if the rectal temperature is above 100.4 or higher, or below 98.6, so they're hypothermic or hyperthermic, then you need to bring them to your doctor right away. Some babies do not present with fevers. Instead, they present with a temperature drop and they're hypothermic, which is an indication that they are actually very sick. Those are two standard emergency visits. Other than that, if you feel that your baby is not acting normal, quote unquote normal, to what you're used to in the past 2 weeks or 1 month that you've had your baby, and they're doing things that seem out of character, you should always feel free to call your pediatrician or go to your pediatrician rather than try to figure it out yourself. Babies are not small adults. They are completely different. It's a completely different patient than an adult. So rather than Google or trying to figure it out on your own or rationalizing what could possibly be happening with your infant, call your pediatrician or go to their office if you feel uncomfortable or if you feel that you do not understand what is happening with your child. Okay, so we have another question coming in, and this is from Darius. Hello, Dr. Constant. Just like one of the other guys who reached out earlier, I want to be there for my girl, Chandra. I told her I'll be the one in charge of diapers and give baths. Speaking of baths, what's the best way to bathe him or her, and how often? So to answer your question, Darius, as far as your newborn is concerned, you would bathe the newborn probably every other day or every 2 days. The reality is they don't get that dirty, they're not sweating, and they're even in the first few weeks, they're not even pooping as often as they do later on in life. So I would say every 2 days, every other day, and then you can increase it as you'd like. And the best way to bathe a newborn up to 3 months, actually up to 6 months of age, is in a bassinet. If you have a baby bassinet that you put in the tub, you can fill that up with water. And actually they have a pillow inside the bassinet that props your baby up so that they will never be fully submerged in the water. And it just decreases the chance of a drowning where you're covering the face with water. So the water usually comes up to about here, about chest level. So then you can just let your baby lay there and you can wash them with a washcloth. You can soak them, they can play, they splash around in the water. And it's really nice. There's like a grip in place so they wouldn't slide down and their head won't go underwater. So they're propped up. And then that way you're in a comfortable position and it's just a lot safer for everyone. The tub is pre-filled, so you don't have to worry about the water getting too hot or too cold. You don't want to fill the tub. You don't want to have running water during a bath. You want to pre-fill up the bassinet, then put your baby in, and then you can just relax and bathe them calmly. And it's just a lot safer and a lot less stressful for everyone. Okay, so keep sending in your questions, guys. I will try to answer as many as I can in this time because I know that, the first 3 months of life are very stressful and there's a lot going on and it's really hard to stay on top of everything. And sometimes you go to your pediatrician and you forget all of the questions that you wanted to ask them. So send in your questions and I will definitely try to answer them as best I can. Looks like we have another one coming in. This is from Samira. Hello, doctor. Hello. I can't believe that nobody has inquired about vaccinations yet. That's all I can think about lately. What vaccinations will my newborn need and when should they be administered? And what about the new disease spread by mosquitoes like Zika and West Nile? Do infants need to be inoculated against those diseases? Great question, Samira. No, infants do not need to be inoculated against mosquito-borne illnesses. And actually, more importantly, they're not endemic here in the US, so nobody is getting vaccinated against those. It's unless you're going to an endemic area. So vaccinations in the newborn period, you typically in the hospital, the hepatitis B vaccine is administered the first 24 hours of life. And then coming from the hospital into your pediatrician's office is when we'll start the vaccination schedule. The first round of vaccines typically starts at 2 months of age. It could be as young as 6 weeks of age, but usually in the office, we'll do it at the 2-month visit. And so the preliminary vaccines are broken up into small doses. Since it is a newborn, we actually inoculate in small doses and give boosters. So your child will get vaccines at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. And then at the 1-year visit, they will get a new round of vaccines, which is the MMR and varicella. But the 2, 4, 6 are the same vaccines, and they're just in microdoses so that they're boosters. The reason for getting the hepatitis B vaccine in the hospital is, yes, of course, hepatitis B was transmitted via vaginal delivery, so through the vaginal canal. So if there is a mother that is positive for hepatitis B and is unaware or has not been adequately treated, she could possibly pass that on to her infant. So we have been vaccinating within the first 24 hours of life in order to avoid this incident. Yes, I understand that now we are definitely testing, making sure that moms do not have hepatitis B. This is less frequent. And if you know for a fact that you don't have hepatitis B, your question might be, well, then why is my child receiving this vaccine? Well, the reality is either way, they need to get their hepatitis B vaccine. It's in 3 doses. So the first dose can be at the first within the first 24 hours of life, or the first dose can be given at 2 months of age. But if they get it in the first 24 hours of life, the beautiful thing about getting a vaccine is not necessarily that you're protecting against hepatitis B, but also you're jumpstarting the immune system. This is a way to get those antibodies going. We're already giving active immunity. So maybe you're not particularly concerned about hepatitis B per se, but it is a jumpstart to your baby's immune system, which is a great advantage. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. Forrest has a question. Hi, Dr. Constant. My wife and I are expecting baby number 2 shortly. Baby number 1, Kirk, is a well-adjusted kid, but he was a fussy baby and extremely hard to soothe. Doc, do you have any tricks or suggestions we can use? Well, Forrest, I will tell you this, as a pediatrician and as a parent, remember every child is completely different. So just because Forrest was fussy doesn't mean that your baby number 2 will be fussy. With that said, yes, there are a few tricks of the trade. I love swaddling. I try to encourage families to swaddle as much as possible. Some people think that their babies don't like it, or maybe they feel uncomfortable or it's restricting, but studies have shown that swaddling, the reason why it works and why it's so soothing is because babies do not have a sense of positioning. So when they're laying on their back and they're able to flail their arms and legs around, they almost have this feeling like they're falling backwards and they don't know what to do. So it's a very unsettling feeling. So swaddling allows the arms to be in contact with the body, so they have a sense of being of proprioception and where they are, and then you swaddle them so they constantly feel their body and they are not frightened. I mean, some babies are actually frightened by their own hand touching their face or touching their body. So they have their hands and arms against their body, and then you swaddle them, and that will relax them and soothe them. You could rock your baby slowly. You could take walks around the house, singing to them, humming, massaging the belly if it's colic. Sometimes babies just like a little bit of tummy time. You can put your baby on your chest as a form of tummy time, and it'll soothe them as well. And those are some tricks that might help your fussy or colicky baby. Good luck. And I hope baby number 2 is not a fussy baby. Usually if you have one fussy one, you wouldn't have a second one. So let's see if that rule of thumb works. Okay, next question looks like it's coming in from Facebook, and this is from Brenna. Hey, Dr. Constant, my hubby Bradford and I are in a little bit over our heads here. We're both onlys, and other than a crib, diapers, and onesies, we have no idea what other essential items we're going to need for our newborn. Okay, Brenna, well, that's okay. It's normal to not have an idea. Sometimes you don't know until you know. What does that mean? It means that when you have your baby, you realize there are some things that you would prefer to have around or you feel that would be helpful for you. So you don't necessarily have to have everything in place and in stock before your baby arrives. That's just unrealistic. So when you have your baby, you'll realize that great, you have a lot of diapers, but maybe the wipes that you have are not the ones that work well with his skin. Maybe he needs wipes that are unscented and that are gentle. So I would definitely have baby wipes. I would definitely have a baby diaper cream, like a butt paste or like a Desitin type of ointment where you can put a barrier ointment on your child when you're changing their diaper. Definitely having extra onesies and having lots of burp cloths around for spit up and sometimes there are some little accidents. And, I think starting bare minimum this way, of course, bottles, if you need bottles and bottle cleaners, those are your bare minimum. And then once your baby comes, you'll see what you might need, or maybe you have too much and you can be very minimal and just have a very small amount of items. So just see how you guys are doing. And in the meantime, just make sure you have what you need to change the diapers, what you have to feed, and that's it. You're going to feed, change diapers, and put your baby down for a nap. Those are the 3 things that you're doing. Don't forget your car seat, because you do need to bring that to the hospital, and you have to actually put your car seat in the car at the hospital so the nurses can see that you know how to use it and that it's placed appropriately. So don't forget the car seat. Okay, looks like we have another question coming in. This is from Clara. Hi, Dr. Constant. We have a baby on the way and a 2-year-old at home. How can we help our toddler get used to the new little one that will be joining us soon? Okay, well, Clara, I am not sure if you have a 2-year-old child at home or a 2-year-old puppy, so I'll answer both. For your child, I definitely suggest talking to your 2-year-old during your pregnancy, explaining to them what it means a baby is coming, showing them where you're going to put the baby, show them the crib, they'll be sleeping there. Even if your 2-year-old is not very verbal, they do understand what you're saying and they understand what's going on. So really be open with them. You can read books about being an older sibling. You can talk to them about being an older sibling and how they're going to help and what their role will be in the house. You will show them where the baby will sleep, where the baby is going to take their baths, and that they're going to play together. And you just really want to prepare your 2-year-old. And then when the baby does come, I really try to urge my parents to include your child in the care of your baby. Don't close the door and say, well, I'm nursing or I'm changing the diaper. I'll be right there. Go play outside. Have them be involved. Have them be hands-on so that they have a role. Everybody wants a role within the family. So you need to make sure that they understand that they're not being discarded. They're actually an active member and they're actually taking part in this new chapter in your lives. If you're talking about a 2-year-old puppy, I suggest that before you come home, you bring a burp cloth or even a diaper to your house and let the puppy smell it so that they know the baby is coming and they're familiar with the baby when you enter the home. This works very well, and it's very helpful if you have any animals at home and you want to make sure that they are ready and they're going to be used to your baby. I hope I answered your questions. Good luck to all of you that are pregnant and expecting during this holiday season. I hope that this helped. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to write in. And if you haven't already, please make sure you go out and vote. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Health Channel podcast. We hope this information has been useful. However, please remember that only your doctor can advise you about what is best for you. Do not start, modify, or suspend treatment based on anything you have heard on this podcast. Please join us again soon.